The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people had looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. In the year 2347, they finally got their answer, and it was not what they had hoped for. The starship Endurance hung in orbit around a massive gas giant called Valoran Prime. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge, watching through the main view screen as a small diplomatic shuttle flew toward the enormous space station that floated nearby. Inside that shuttle was her old friend, Ambassador Samuel Grant. Carrying humanity's hopes for peace with the alien races that ruled this part of the galaxy, Catherine was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. She had served in the military for 40 years, and her instincts had kept her alive through situations that should have killed her. Right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. The Galactic Council was a group of 12 alien species that had controlled the Orion arm of the galaxy for over 40,000 years. When humanity had first made contact with them 5 years ago, they had hoped for friendship, for knowledge, for a place among the stars. Instead, they had found only contempt. The Valathi were beings made of living crystal who thought in pure mathematics. They had calculated that humans were too primitive to matter. The Kreth were giant insectoid warriors who stood 3 meters tall and viewed all other species as either threats or prey. They had looked at humanity and seen only weakness. And the Dominari, the oldest and most powerful of all the council races, simply called humans an infection that needed to be contained. But Samuel Grant believed that minds could be changed. He had spent his entire life studying alien cultures, learning their languages, understanding their ways of thinking. He believed that if he could just talk to them, really talk to them, could make them see that humanity deserved a place at the table. Catherine had tried to warn him. She had told him that some enemies could not be reasoned with, that some hatreds ran too deep for words to heal. But Samuel had just smiled that gentle smile of his and said that he had to try. That was who he was. That was why she loved him like a brother. The shuttle docked with the station, and Catherine watched it disappear inside. She turned to her communications officer, a young man named Daniel Price, and told him to keep all channels open. She wanted to know the moment anything happened. The hours passed slowly. Catherine paced the bridge, unable to sit still, unable to shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her chest. Her crew watched her with worried eyes. They had never seen their admiral so unsettled. Then the transmission came. It was broadcast on every frequency, sent to every human ship, every human colony, every listening post in the galaxy. The image showed the main chamber of the Galactic Council, a vast circular room with seats for representatives of all 12 species. In the center of the room, surrounded by guards, stood Samuel Grant. High Counselor Vetheri of the Dominari rose from his seat. He was an ancient being, his gray skin marked with the patterns of his noble bloodline, his eyes cold and pitiless. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like a judge pronouncing sentence. "Humanity has sent this creature to us with demands," Vetheri said. "They demand to be recognized as equals. They demand a seat on this council. They demand rights that they have not earned, privileges that they do not deserve." Samuel tried to speak, to explain that he had come with offers of friendship, not demands. But the guards forced him to his knees, and Vetheri continued. "For 40,000 years, the Council has maintained order in this galaxy. We have crushed rebellions. We have exterminated threats. We have ensured that the natural hierarchy of species is preserved. Humanity is young. Humanity is primitive. Humanity is nothing." He turned to look directly at the camera, and Catherine felt as if those cold eyes were staring straight at her. "This is our answer to human arrogance." Kreth warrior stepped forward, drawing a massive blade from its sheath. Samuel looked up at the camera one last time, and Catherine saw no fear in his eyes, only sadness. Sadness for a dream that would never come true? The blade fell. Catherine stood frozen as the image of her friend's body collapsed to the floor of the council chamber. Around her, she heard her crew crying out in horror, in rage, in disbelief, but she could not move. She could not speak. She could only stare at the screen as Vetheria's voice continued. Let this serve as a warning to all humans. You are not our equals. You will never be our equals. Submit to the natural order or face extinction. The transmission ended. For a long moment, there was silence on the bridge of the Endurance. Then, slowly, Catherine turned to face her crew. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with something that went beyond anger. It was something ancient, something primal. Something that had been buried deep in human nature since the first cave dweller had picked up a rock to defend their family. "Daniel," she said. Her voice steady as stone, open a secure channel to Earth's High Command. Priority 1. Tell them that Ambassador Grant is dead. Tell them the Council has declared war on humanity. Daniel's hands shook as he worked the controls. "Admiral, what do we do?" Catherine looked back at the view screen. At the massive space station where her friend's blood was still warm on the floor. "We remind them why our ancestors survived when so many other species on Earth did not," she said. "We remind them what happens when you corner a human being and leave them no choice but to fight." She walked to her command chair and sat down, her movements precise and controlled. "Contact High Command," she repeated. "Tell them I need to speak with the President directly. Tell them we need to discuss the Annihilation Directive." Her crew exchanged worried glances. They had heard rumors about the Annihilation Directive, whispered stories about a secret weapon that humanity had been building for centuries. But no one knew if it was real or just a myth to comfort children who feared the dark between the stars. They were about to find out. Catherine closed her eyes and thought of Samuel Grant, of his kind smile and his unshakable faith in the goodness of others. He had believed that humanity could be better than its darkest impulses. He had believed that peace was possible. The Council had taken that belief and thrown it back in humanity's face. Now they would learn what happened when humans stopped believing in peace. Now they would learn what happened when humans started believing in war far away. On a blue planet called Earth, alarms began to sound in bunkers that had been sealed for 200 years. Generals who had hoped they would never receive this call reached for phones with trembling hands. And in the cold depths of space, weapons that had been sleeping since before anyone alive was born began to wake up. The Council had wanted to teach humanity its place. They were about to learn that humanity's place was wherever humanity decided it would be. The message reached Earth in less than an hour, thanks to the quantum communication network that humanity had built over the past century. Admiral Catherine Cole's words traveled across the vast emptiness of space almost instantly. By the time most humans were waking up to their morning coffee, their government was already preparing for war. President Elizabeth Marsh stood in the Situation Room beneath the old city of Geneva, surrounded by military commanders, scientists, and diplomats. She was a small woman with white hair and tired eyes, but her voice carried the weight of 8 billion lives when she spoke. "Show me the recording," she said. They showed her. They showed her Samuel Grant kneeling on the floor of the council chamber. They showed her the Creth blade rising and falling. They showed her the High Counselor's cold smile as he declared humanity worthless. When it was over, Elizabeth Marsh sat down heavily in her chair. She had known Samuel Grant. She had appointed him to this mission personally, had shaken his hand and wished him luck. She had told him that the future of humanity rested on his shoulders. Now he was dead, and that future had changed forever. "General Webb," she said quietly, "tell me about the Annihilation Directive." General Marcus Webb was an old soldier with a scarred face and hands that had seen decades of combat. He had hoped he would never have to answer this question. He had prayed that the universe would be kinder than humanity's worst fears. "Madam President," he began, 200 years ago, when we first detected signals from beyond our solar system, our founders made a decision. They decided that we needed to prepare for the worst. They created the Annihilation Directive as a last resort, a weapon to be used only if humanity faced extinction. He activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Images appeared showing weapons and ships that most of the people present had never seen before. For the past 2 centuries, we have been secretly building an arsenal unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. We have warships hidden in the asteroid belt powered by engines that can compress space itself. We have automated factories on moons and asteroids that can produce entire fleets in a matter of weeks. We have weapons that can tear holes in the fabric of reality." He paused, and his face grew even more serious. "And we have the Omega Protocol." The holographic display changed, showing a map of the galaxy with dozens of red dots scattered across it. "Relativistic kill vehicles," Marcus explained. 47 of them, positioned near Ever. Why Council Homeworld and Major Colony? They have been in place for decades, drifting silently through space, waiting for a signal. Each one is capable of accelerating to nearly the speed of light and striking a planet with enough force to completely destroy it. The room was silent. Even the most hardened military commanders looked pale. "You're telling me," Elizabeth said slowly, "that we have planet-killing weapons aimed at every major alien civilization in this part of the galaxy?" "Yes, Madam President. Our founders understood that we might one day face an enemy we could not defeat through conventional means. They understood that our only hope of survival might be the ability to threaten mutually assured destruction. If the Council wipes us out, their worlds die with us." Elizabeth closed her eyes. She thought of her grandchildren, of the parks where they played, of the schools where they learned about the wonders of the universe. She thought of all the dreams that humanity had carried to the stars, and she thought of Samuel Grant, who had believed so deeply in peace that he had walked into the lion's den with nothing but words and hope. "The Council killed a man who came to them with open hands," she said finally. "They killed him and broadcast his murder to the entire galaxy. They want us to be afraid. They want us to submit." She stood up, and her voice hardened like steel. "Humanity will not submit. We did not survive ice ages, plagues, and world wars just to kneel before aliens who think they are better than us because they are older." She turned to General Webb. "Activate the directive. Bring our hidden fleet out of reserve. And prepare the Omega Protocol for deployment. Do not launch the kill vehicles yet, but make sure they are ready to fire on my command." "Madam President," one of the diplomats spoke up nervously, "if we do this, there is no going back. The Council will see us as a threat to be eliminated." "They already see us that way," Elizabeth replied. "They made that clear when they cut off Samuel's head. The only question now is whether they see us as a threat they can eliminate, or a threat they must respect." She looked around the room at the men and women who would carry out her orders. "I want the Council to understand something. I want them to understand that humanity is not just another primitive species to be stepped on. I want them to understand that we have claws, and we know how to use them. And I want them to understand that if they push us, we will push back so hard that their civilization will be nothing but a memory." The orders went out within the hour. Across the solar system, ships that had been hiding for decades powered up their engines and began to move. Factories that had been dormant came to life, producing weapons at a rate that would have seemed impossible to previous generations. And far out in the darkness between the stars, 47 silent weapons received their activation codes and began to accelerate. Admiral Catherine Cole received her orders while still orbiting Valoran Prime. She read them twice, then looked out at the alien space station where her friend had died. "Navigation," she said calmly. "Plot a course back to the rendezvous point. We're going to pick up some friends." "How many friends, Admiral?" her navigator asked. Catherine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. 300 warships. And when we come back here, we're going to teach the Council a lesson they will never forget." The Endurance turned and disappeared into the darkness of space. Behind her, the Council celebrated their victory over the weak and primitive. Humans. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment. For 200 years, they had no idea that the species they had dismissed as worthless was about to show them the true meaning of fear. The universe was vast and cold, and it did not care about justice or fairness. But humanity had learned long ago that the universe did not hand out survival as a gift. Survival had to be taken, had to be fought for, had to be earned with blood and fire and an unbreakable will. The Council had forgotten that lesson they were about to remember. 20-2 hours, after the execution of Ambassador Samuel Grant, the Galactic Council was preparing a celebration. High Counselor Vethry had ordered a grand feast to honor what he called the beginning of humanity's submission. Representatives from all 12 council species gathered in the Great Hall of Valoran Station, drinking rare wines and congratulating each other on putting the upstart humans in their place. Commander Crethanol of the Creth Dominion was the guest of honor. He was a massive insectoid creature, standing nearly 4 meters tall, with armored plates covering his body and blades built into his arms. He was the one who had swung the sword that killed Samuel Grant, and he wore that fact like a badge of pride. The humans will learn their place now, Crethanol said, his clicking voice translated by the device around his neck. They are soft creatures. They break easily. Once they see that resistance is hopeless, they will crawl to us begging for mercy. The other council members nodded in agreement. The Velothi had calculated that human civilization would collapse within 50 years. The Dominari were already dividing up human space among themselves. Everyone agreed that this was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, the weak submitted. Then the alarms started screaming. Vethry rushed to the command center, pushing past servants and guards. When he reached the main control room, he found his officers staring at their screens with expressions of pure disbelief. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Ships, High Counselor," the sensor officer stammered. "Human ships. They just appeared out of nowhere." "How many?" The officer swallowed hard. 312, High Counselor. Warships. Big ones. Aetheri felt something cold settle in his stomach. That was impossible. Human space was weeks away at normal speeds. Their fastest ships could not have arrived this quickly. And 300 warships? Humanity did not have 300 warships. Their entire fleet was less than 100 vessels. He looked at the tactical display and saw the red dots surrounding the station. They had appeared in a perfect sphere, cutting off every possible escape route. It was a formation that spoke of absolute confidence, of predators who knew their prey could not escape. "How did they get here so fast?" Vethry asked, his voice barely a whisper. Before anyone could answer, transmission cut through their communications. The image of Admiral Catherine Cole appeared on every screen in the command center. She was sitting in her command chair, her face as cold and hard as stone. "High Counselor Vethry," she said. "I am Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth Navy. You killed my friend yesterday. You killed him and called it justice. Now I am here to teach you about real justice." Vethry tried to keep his voice steady. "You threaten us, Admiral? With 300 ships against our fleet of 12,000. Human arrogance is truly boundless." "I have not finished speaking," Catherine replied, and something in her voice made the old Dominari fall silent. "As of 6 hours ago, we activated weapons that have been waiting in the darkness of space for decades. Relativistic kill vehicles aimed at every council homeworld. They are accelerating as we speak. If I do not send a specific abort code within the next hour, they will strike your planets with the force of small stars." She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to burn through the screen. "The weapon heading for Dominari Prime is currently traveling at 97% of the speed of light. It will arrive in 112 hours. You will not see it coming. You cannot stop it. Your world, your species, your entire civilization will be reduced to ash." Vethry's mouth opened, but no words came out. Around him, his officers were checking their sensors, desperately trying to verify the humans' claims. What they found made their blood run cold. The weapons were real. They had been hiding in deep space, completely invisible to council sensors, and they were already moving too fast to intercept. "No, you're insane," Vethry finally managed to say. "You would destroy the galaxy over one dead human?" "No," Catherine replied. "I would destroy the galaxy because you left us no choice. You could have accepted our friendship. You could have treated us as equals. Instead, you murdered an innocent man to make a point. You wanted to show us that we were powerless. You were wrong." She stood up from her chair. "You have 59 minutes to surrender. Bring Ambassador Grant's body to my ship. Present the one who ordered his execution for judgment. Do this, and I will send the abort codes. Refuse, and your species dies." The transmission ended. For a moment, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. The Kreth demanded an immediate attack on the human fleet. The Velothi began calculating survival probabilities and found them unacceptable. The smaller council races started screaming at each other, blaming everyone for this disaster. But Vetheri stood still in the middle of the storm, staring at the tactical display. He was old. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had crushed rebellions and exterminated threats. He had believed that nothing in the galaxy could threaten the Dominari. He had been wrong. The humans had done something that no other species had ever managed. They had forced the Galactic Council to choose between pride and survival. And as Vetheri looked at the kill vehicle racing toward his homeworld, he realized that pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. "Enough," he said quietly, but his voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Everyone be silent." The room fell still. "Contact the human fleet," Vetheri ordered. "Tell them we accept their terms, High Counselor." Crethanel roared. "We cannot surrender to these primitives. The honor of the Council demands. The honor of the Council means nothing if there is no Council left." Vetheri interrupted. "They have beaten us. It is time to face that truth." He looked at the screen one last time, at the red dots that surrounded them like a closing fist. "Prepare Ambassador Grant's body, and Commander Crethanel, you will come with me. It seems the humans want to discuss your role in yesterday's events." For the first time in his life, the great Kreth warrior felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The shuttle from Valoran. Station approached the Endurance slowly, as if afraid of what waited inside. Admiral Catherine Cole watched it through the view screen, her face showing no emotion. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew that the next few hours would change the galaxy forever. The shuttle carried 3 passengers. High Counselor Vetheri of the Dominari represented the Council itself. 2 of his guards accompanied him, though they had been forced to leave their weapons behind. And in a sealed container wrapped in the simple white cloth of a human burial shroud lay the body of Ambassador Samuel Grant. Catherine met them in the main hangar bay. She was surrounded by 50 Marines in powered combat armor, each one standing over 2 meters tall and carrying enough weapons to level a small building. The Dominari guards, who had thought themselves impressive warriors, suddenly looked very small. Vetheri stepped forward and bowed his head. It was the first time in recorded history that a Dominari High Counselor had bowed to anyone. "Admiral Cole," he said, his voice tight with the effort of controlling his pride, "we return your envoy and submit ourselves to your judgment." Catherine walked past him without a word. She knelt beside the container that held Samuel's body and placed her hand on the cold metal surface. For a long moment, she simply stayed there, remembering the man who had believed so deeply in the possibility of peace. When she finally stood up and turned around, her eyes were dry. She had no more tears left. All that remained was a cold, hard purpose. Who gave the order? She asked. Vetheri hesitated. The execution was approved by the full council, but the directive came from Commander Crethanel of the Kreth's Dominion. He argued that killing your ambassador would ensure human compliance. Where is he now? Being transported on a separate shuttle, as you requested. He should arrive within the hour. Catherine nodded slowly. You will wait here. When Crethanel arrives, we will begin the trial. Trial? Vetheri asked. Admiral, I must protest. Commander Crethanel is a high-ranking member of He is a Murderer. Catherine cut him off. And he will be judged as one. Your rank means nothing here. Your species means nothing here. The only thing that matters is what he did and what happens next. Vetheri opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He looked at the Marines surrounding him, at the cold determination in Catherine's eyes, and he understood that there was no room for negotiation. An hour later, Commander Crethanel was dragged into the hangar bay in chains. It had taken 20 Marines to subdue him, and 3 of them were being treated for injuries. Even bound and surrounded by enemies, the massive insectoid warrior radiated defiance. You think you have one? Crethanol snarled at Catherine. You have won nothing. You are still prey. You are still weak. Kill me, and my people will hunt you across the galaxy until not one human remains. Catherine looked up at the creature who had murdered her friend. He was so much bigger than her, so much stronger. In any fair fight, he would have torn her apart in seconds. But humans had never believed in fair fights. You killed Samuel Grant, she said, her voice calm and steady. You killed a man who came to you with open hands, offering friendship and peace. You killed him because you thought it would make us afraid. She walked closer, until she was standing directly in front of the towering alien. You were wrong. We are not afraid. We are angry. And when humans get angry, we do not hide. We do not run. We fight back with everything we have. The trial was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Catherine served as judge, presenting the evidence against Crethanol to an audience of billions. She showed them the recording of Samuel's execution. She showed them the Council's broadcast threatening humanity with extinction. She showed them everything. When the evidence was presented, Catherine asked Crethanol if he had anything to say in his defense. The Creth warrior laughed, a harsh clicking sound that echoed through the hangar. Defense? I need no defense. I did what was necessary to maintain order. Your species is a disease, and I was trying to cure it. If I had my way, I would have killed every human in the galaxy, not just your pathetic ambassador. Catherine nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. She drew her sidearm, a heavy pistol that had been designed specifically to penetrate Creth armor. Crethanol's eyes widened, but he did not look away. Even facing death, his pride would not let him show fear. Samuel Grant believed in peace, Catherine said. He believed that all species could live together, that hatred could be overcome with understanding. You took that belief and threw it in our faces. You showed us that some enemies cannot be reasoned with. Some enemies can only be destroyed. She raised the pistol and aimed at the center of Crethanol's head. This is not revenge, she said. This is justice. For Samuel Grant. For all the humans you wanted to kill. For the lesson you need to learn. The shot echoed through the hangar bay. Crethanol's body crashed to the deck. In silence fell over the watching galaxy. Catherine holstered her weapon and turned to face the camera that was broadcasting to billions of viewers. Let this serve as a warning, she said. Humanity did not come to the stars seeking war. We came seeking friendship, seeking knowledge, seeking our place among the stars. You rejected our friendship. You murdered our people. Now you have seen what we are capable of. She paused, letting her words sink in. The relativistic kill vehicles remain active. They will stay active until we are satisfied that humanity is safe. Attack us, and your worlds die. Threaten us, and your civilizations become ash and memory. But respect us, treat us as equals, and we can build something better together. The choice is yours. She turned back to the body of Commander Crethanol. Remove this from my ship, and tell the Council that the Annihilation Directive stays in effect until further notice. The message was clear. Humanity had been pushed to the edge. They had been threatened with extinction by beings who thought themselves superior, and they had pushed back with a force that the galaxy had never seen before. The Council had wanted to teach humanity its place. Instead, humanity had taught the Council a lesson that would echo through history for thousands of years. Some species, when cornered, simply died. Humans fought back, and now the entire galaxy knew it. 5 years had passed since the day humanity showed its teeth to the galaxy. 5 years since Admiral Catherine Cole had executed Commander Crethanol in front of billions of viewers. 5 years since the Galactic Council learned that the young species they had dismissed as worthless was anything but. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The Council still existed, but it was no longer the same. The old order, built on the idea that older species were naturally superior to younger ones, had crumbled. In its place, a new system was being built. One where humanity sat as an equal partner at the table. Human ambassadors now walked freely through halls that had once been forbidden to them. Human ships traveled through space lanes that had once been controlled exclusively by the Council races. Human ideas, human art, human culture spread across the stars, mixing with the traditions of a dozen alien civilizations. It was not perfect. Old hatreds died slowly, and there were those on both sides who still dreamed of war. The Kreth Dominion had never forgiven humanity for the death of their commander. Some Dominari nobles whispered that the proper order should be restored. And among humans, there were voices calling for revenge, for the complete destruction of species that had once threatened their existence. But the Annihilation Directive ensured that no one acted on these impulses. The relativistic kill vehicles still drifted through the darkness of space, still aimed at Council homeworlds, still waiting for the signal that would end civilizations. As long as they existed, no one dared to strike the first blow. Admiral Catherine Cole had retired from active service. 3 years after the confrontation at Valoran Prime, she had done what needed to be done. But the weight of it had left scars that would never fully heal. She had killed to protect her people, had threatened to destroy entire worlds, had looked into the eyes of her enemies, and shown no mercy. Samuel Grant would not have approved. He had believed in peace and understanding, in the possibility that different species could learn to live together without the threat of mutual destruction hanging over their heads. Every time Catherine thought about what she had done, she wondered if her old friend would have forgiven her. She lived on a small farm now, in the mountains of a place that had once been called Montana. The land was quiet and green, far from the bustle of cities and the constant noise of civilization. She spent her days working the soil, watching the sky, and thinking about the past. Sometimes young officers would come to visit her, seeking wisdom from the woman who had brought the galaxy to its knees. She always told them the same thing. "Power is not the point," she would say, her voice soft with age and memory. Samuel understood that. He knew we had weapons. He knew we could have gone to the Council with threats and ultimatums. But he chose peace instead, because he believed we could be better than our fears. She would look up at the stars, at the vast expanse of space that humanity now shared with dozens of other species. The Council forced our hand. We did what we had to do to survive. But never forget what we lost when we pulled that trigger. Never forget that Samuel died believing in a better way. On Dominari Prime, the political landscape had shifted dramatically. High Counselor Vitharia had been removed from power within a year of the confrontation, placed by younger leaders who understood that the old ways could not continue. The new government had reached out to humanity, offering trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. Slowly, carefully, trust was being built. Human tourists now visited the ancient cities of the Dominari, marveling at architecture that had stood for tens of thousands of years. Dominari students came to Earth studying human history and trying to understand how such a young species had become so powerful. It was strange and awkward and sometimes painful. But it was progress. The Valathi had approached the situation with their usual cold logic. They had calculated that cooperation with humanity offered better long-term outcomes than conflict, and they had adjusted their behavior accordingly. They still did not understand human emotions, still found human art and music confusing, but they had learned to respect human intelligence and determination. Even the Kreth, after years of tension and distrust, had begun to change. A new generation of warriors was growing up, one that had never known a galaxy where humans were considered prey. They looked at humanity and saw not weakness, but a different kind of strength. Some of them even expressed admiration for a species that had refused to back down in the face of overwhelming odds. President Elizabeth Marsh served 2 terms before retiring. In her final address to the United Earth government, she spoke about the future with hope and caution in equal measure. "We have become what Samuel Grant dreamed we could be," she said. "Not conquerors, but partners. Not victims, but equals." He died believing that was possible, and we have made his belief into reality. That is his legacy. That is what we must protect. She paused, and her old eyes grew serious. But we must never forget the price we are willing to pay. The Annihilation Directive remains active because the galaxy is not yet ready to trust without fear. Perhaps one day that will change. Perhaps one day we will be able to stand down our weapons and face the universe with open hands, the way Samuel wanted. Until then, we must walk the line between peace and war, always hoping for the best, but always prepared for the worst. On a hill overlooking the city of Geneva, a monument stood in honor of Ambassador Samuel Grant. His name was carved in stone, alongside the words he had spoken in his final transmission to Earth before his death. Remember who we are? Remember what we can become. And never let fear make us less than we should be. Visitors from 100 worlds came to read those words. Humans and Dominar, Velothi and Kreth, standing together in the shadow of a memorial to a man who had believed that peace was possible. Samuel Grant had been right. In the end, humanity and the council races were learning to live together. Trade flourished. Cultural exchange programs brought young people from different species together to learn from each other. The old hatreds were fading, slowly but surely, replaced by something that looked almost like friendship. It had taken threats and violence and the willingness to destroy everything to get here. It had taken humanity showing its darkest side before the galaxy would accept its brightest hopes. That was the tragedy of it all. That was the lesson that Catherine Cole thought about every night as she sat on her porch and watched the stars. But perhaps that was simply how the universe worked. Perhaps strength and peace were not opposites, but two sides of the same coin. Perhaps the only way to earn respect was to show that you could fight back if you had to. Humanity had come to the stars, seeking its place among the stars. It had found that place, not through submission or through conquest, but through the simple refusal to accept anything less than it deserved. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. Some species, when pushed to the edge of extinction, simply broke. Humanity pushed back, and now, finally, there was peace.